Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. Today is Monday, February 22nd, and the time now is 9:05. Notice for this public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on Monday, February 15th. Second notice on Thursday, February 18th. And for the record, today is Monday, February 22nd, 2021, and the time now is 9:05. The committee will hear and accept testimonies on Bill 23-36 as introduced by Senator Jose Piro Terlay, an act to authorize the Guam Police Department to use lapse funds from FY 2019 to be used for operational expenses of the department. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me. I have the author of the bill, Senator Piro Terlay, Senator Tony Ada, Senator Tello Taidagui, and Senator Joanne Brown. Rules of engagement for this public hearing. Those testifying on behalf of Bill 23-36 CR will be recognized by myself, and we do have Chief Ignacio who has advised me that he's on his way. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimonies may be read, and lengthy testimonies should be summarized to about 5 minutes. Individuals will be allowed to present oral testimony only once. Once you're done, you may be asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda, which is Bill 23-36. Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the public hearing. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and or may be asked to leave or be escorted from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. You will state your name and your title for the record. I'd like to also recognize Senator Chris Duenas that joined us this morning. I would ask now Senator Jose Piro Terlay to please make his opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you for your attendance this morning. Mr. Chair, my colleagues and the people of Guam, Bill 2336 is an act to provide a continuing appropriation for the Guam Police Department. The police chief and his staff located the funds and asked my office to allow them to use the funds for operational purposes. This is a testament to the hard work of GPD chief and his management team, and I humbly ask my colleagues to pass this measure so we can provide much needed funding to GPD to keep the community safe. And I want to thank Mr. Chair for allowing me to present my testimony this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Terlay. So noted on the OFB's notes and also BBMR, it doesn't identify the law which needs to be amended. That will be incorporated, and we'll identify that as we move along before the bill is reported out. Does any of my colleagues like to speak about the bill? I'll begin with Senator Tony Ada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the Chairman of the Oversight Chair for Public Safety, Senator Piro. Thank you. Just a clarification on the bill, because the title says to use lapsed funds from FY 2019, and in the body of the bill it does say in FY 2020. So just to kind of get a clarification of that. And if any amendments need to be made, that they be adjusted in the committee, Mr. Chair?
That's correct.
Thank you. And then also, I'm glad that this measure is moving forward, and thank you to the author, Senator Terlay, for introducing it. We did have inquiries from personnel at GPD on the stipend of the police reserves, that, they're lagging behind a little bit on it. And hopefully that this will cure that situation so that we can bring everyone up to date and ensure that their pay is up to date as well with this measure moving forward. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Chris, do you have any statements you'd like to make? Reference to the bill?
Sizos Masi, Mr. Chairman, and obviously the intention of Bill 2336 is, I'm sure, absolutely well intended. I guess I was trying to catch up with the BBMR testimony as well as Office of Finance and Budget. But if I could, just a simple question to the author is, are these funds in any way have been appropriated in our current year funding, or are they considered not appropriated by the passage of the fiscal 2021 budget?
Senator, if you look at the bill, Bill 2336, and these are lapses from the Police Patrol Vehicle Revolving Fund at the amount of $81,744.51. And on fiscal year 2020, there's like 213,000 of lapse, 703.24 from the Safe School Initiative for fiscal year 2020. And there's no appropriation needed for this bill. These are only lapses from 2019 and 2020. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, the reason why I asked that question is obviously having not been part of the drafting of that prior budget, but having been a part of budgets in the past in the 31 and the 32nd Guam legislature, there is from time to time authorization for agencies to carry over lapses, and they consider it as part of their operational budget for that fiscal year. So I'm going to take it on good faith that the good author of this bill has worked with the budget as passed in the last fiscal year, and that it was not encumbered, if you will, as part of the operational budget for these for the agencies. And if that's the fact that these monies are lapsed and considered available, because maybe I'm reading it a little different, but this is an appropriation for a purpose. So it's moving that money, and so that was my concern, Mr. Chairman, just to ensure that we don't have a double appropriation, which I have seen in the past. So if that's all clear and it becomes clear as this bill makes it to the floor, I stand in full support because I think this is a very meaningful use of the revenue, pending the fact that the revenue actually exists and has not been appropriated. But just want to say, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to get some additional information.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. The appropriate amendments will be made on the bill by the committee to make sure that we're in line with exactly what you mentioned. Senator Tello, do you have anything you would like to mention?
Sijus Mase, Mr. Chair. Good morning, my colleagues, and to the listening audience who are here today. I have no problem with, it's a simple appropriation from a fund that's being used. But, without, Mr. Chair, did they say that police was going to be here, the chief of police, to answer some questions that I think are very important? We understand BBMR did, give us some balances when it came to the Police Patrol Vehicle and Equipment Revolving Fund. In fact, it's mentioned that the bill appropriates 213. However, there is approximately 251,000 in the fund itself. I mean, questions like, Mr. Chair, what is this fund normally used for? What do they use it for? Because there's a blanket, the bill provides a blanket usage of these funds. Now, usually when there are special funds that are created by the body, it's meant to fund a particular area that's always been neglected. And that's why this body usually has these special funds to ensure that it goes to that particular meeting. But What this bill does, Mr. Chair, is it opens it up for anything that can be spent to the department. So something is going to give here, and it's important to hear this from the chief. Is he planning on being here anytime soon, Mr. Chair? Could we take a little break, or because there's a lot of important questions?
Yes, he's here. As a matter of fact, there he is. He'll be seated and he'll be able to explain.
I think he was hearing me. You know, he had those bionic ears.
Please, thank you, Chief. Please continue, Senator Tello. Maybe the Chief will be able to explain about the funding there.
Senator Tello, can you repeat what you just mentioned so that because I would like the chief to answer that on what this money is going to be spent on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. And absolutely, first, I'd like to thank the chief for taking the time to be here today to testify in this bill. I know that according to BBMR, it was said that, of course, the police department does support this measure. But there are a lot of questions, Chief Ignacio, with regards to what was this funding, especially there are two different special funds, one for the Police Patrol Vehicle Equipment Revolving Fund, as well as the Safe School Initiative, fund. There are two different funds. And so I'm going to give you the opportunity, Chief, to go ahead and provide your testimony, and maybe you can explain some of these questions as to, one, what was the fund intended for in the first place? Two, what's the balance currently? And whatever you can give us to help us understand this bill better or feel comfortable about this legislation. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Senator Tyree. Senators, good morning. Hafaday, and thank you for having me here to testify on behalf of Bill 23-36. So the Guam Police Department stands in support of Bill 23-36, and what this bill really does is that it allows us the opportunity to continue to use funds that were unexpended or lapsed from our last fiscal year, to carry them forward so that we can continue to use them for the operations of the Guam Police Department. As you are all aware, the Guam Police Department took a $1.4 million shortfall in the FY21 budget as compared to the FY20 budget. So the the money in this bill would help to offset the loss in the FY21 budget. And really what this is that these funds are used for a specific reason and for a specific cause. The Police Patrol Vehicle Revolving Fund is a fund that was created many years ago and is money that is generated from when you register your vehicle. We take a portion of that money and it goes into this fund. We use that fund currently to repair patrol cars. We use that fund currently to purchase patrol cars and other vehicles that we use to support the Guam Police Department. Currently, this fund is being used in the FY, I believe, 2021 budget. We're using the money that's appropriated to us already to purchase new patrol cars. Each patrol car right now is running us about $45,000 plus for a brand new out-the-door police package patrol vehicle. So as you can see, the $81,000 can be used to purchase one more patrol car. Right now, we have an open purchase order with a vendor where it's a bumper-to-bumper maintenance. And so any problem that we have with any patrol car, we drop it off to the vendor, and they will diagnose and repair a patrol car and put it back out on the street. And we found that has really helped a long way in getting patrol cars out to the street faster than some of the work that we used to do internally with our mechanics. So this fund will go a long way in helping to support that. The Safe Schools Initiative is, this was a fund that was given to the Guam Police Department, I believe, in FY19. It was a fairly new fund, and what happened is that, of course, with it carried over, we had more money again in FY20. And what happened is, of course, because of the pandemic, a lot of the plans that we laid out for the Safe Schools initiative, we were not able to fulfill. So what we have currently going is something called Project U. So Project U is an initiative started by the Juvenile Investigation Section, and it's an all-encompassing program that will focus on enforcement and education, and working together with different groups such as schools, Manietlu, and we're currently involved with the Thrive organization under Wesker Pacific Islands up at the Derrido area. So we're developing, and we've actually developed materials that we'd like to print and then deploy to the children that we'll be working with under Project U. I'd be glad to maybe come back sometime soon, or maybe even visit any of this good senator's office, and we can talk to you about Project U and show you the whole platform, because it's an all-encompassing program from beginning to end, and it's a great program. We've rolled it out. There's a social media presence on Facebook and Instagram already that we've deployed. And so, we're still working through the organizations. We've reached out to many organizations so that we can embed Project U program using Safe Schools Initiative funding to fund it, so that we can embed ourselves with these various organizations that work with youth, especially. And that's the use of these funds. And I think the last one is sorry. Yeah, I think so. I believe those are the two funds that we're talking about. Right.
Thank you, Chief, so much for that explanation. I really appreciate it. And yes, I do remember the Safe School initiative, which was fairly new. And that is really much of the bulk of this legislation and the intention behind it. But, in the bill, so Chief, I have a question for you. In the bill, it does say on line 8 of the legislation that shall be continued to be available for any purpose until fully expended. Would you have any issues or objections if we make an amendment in this area to ensure that this special fund that was created for those purposes, such as the maintenance of the vehicles or the purchase of vehicles, as well as the school initiative that you've been working on for the last year, to make sure that this funding does go to those areas? Do you have a problem with that?
No, Senator. Actually, that's the intention that I've always had with the request for the use of this money. And I've never had any other intention to use this money other than what it was dedicated for.
So no objection at all if we just incorporate that in the legislation?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not using this
and it should be, yeah.
Right, I'm not using this, I'm not going to ask you to use this to pay for anything other than what it's intended for.
Okay, thank you so much, Chief
You're welcome.
Suba. Chief Ignacio, and please be safe out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Brown, do you have anything you would like to ask of the chief or the author of the bill?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I certainly appreciate, I just wanted to follow up with the issue that was brought up by Senator Tello also. I understand the need to be able to access the funds that have since lapsed, but I concur that we just need to define that. If the money is going to go back to be reinvested back in the police patrol vehicle revolving fund and then also in the Safe School Initiative work that they're doing, I don't have a problem, but I certainly do believe the language in line 8 also needs to be amended to reflect that. Because when you use the word available for any purpose, that can be infinitely and undefined. So I think if we just clear that up and reiterate that the funds will be reinvested back onto those respective programs, as the chief had mentioned, then I would have no problem supporting this bill. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Well, you have one more question, Senator Tello? A follow-up? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, just a quick follow-up, Mr. Chair. Chief Ignacio, the amount in the account right now under the Safe School Initiative, According to BBMAR, they said there's $250,000. However, this bill is only requesting for 213. Would you like to fully use the 215 that is balanced in the account, or do you think the 213 is sufficient? This is the BBMR report. It's not, yeah, you can find it way at the bottom, the last section of their minutes. Yeah, no, it's on that page you're looking at right now. Yes. Go to the last paragraph way at the bottom. Yeah.
Senator Tello and Chief, before the bill gets reported out, we're going to scrub this and make sure the amount is accurate, and every penny that the GPD can access, we're going to put it in. All right, so that will cover that question, so the chief don't
Thank you,
have to
Mr.
be
Chair.
searching
Yes.
for that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Senator Blas, do you have any questions, sir? You're good? Okay. Yeah, we'll have the author close, and then we'll move on from here.
I just want to add, Chief, that the 81,744.51 and 213,703.24. I'm going to go ahead and, if you don't mind, I'm going to combine those two numbers and total the two numbers on another bill. Take it out from 19 and 20 and put it on the 2021 budget so that we can move forward with this with no question asked. Thank you. If that's fine with you, Chief, to combine it, or do you want me to separate it on a different category of spending, or just go ahead and give you the total amount for the lapses, and then we will sit down and talk, and and I think Senator Joanne Brown mentioned, and I think it's only fair that we combine the two lapses, and we will sit down and I'll initiate another bill for a specific amount to be used for whatever you need the money for. Thank you.
Would you like to comment, Chief, on to Senator Terlais?
Okay, Senator, I think we're just going to draw from the current fund, following what was left lapse from the prior fiscal year. And if I may point out, sir, I think on the Act, it says FY 2019. I believe these are FY 20 lapse funds that we're tracking, not FY 19.
We'll amend that portion on that
Okay,
one.
I apologize. I
2019
wasn't
will
aware.
reflect 2020.
Right, to
Okay.
reflect 2020.
Senator Adams, Senator Duenas, you have
Yeah, just one more question
follow-up?
for the chief. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, is the Safe School initiative the same as the Safe School programs in section 3112.2 of 17 GCA? Are they the same? Is that the same program, just a different name, or?
No, sir, not that I'm aware of. Like I said, this funding, I believe, was new and introduced in the FY19 budget when I first took over. I've never seen this fund before until FY19.
Okay,
And
thank
that's
you.
why we use it primarily for programs involving minors and, the youth.
No, thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Senator Duenas, you got a follow-up, and then we'll wrap this up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quickly, so yeah, I was deferring to the author, but I wanted to get it on the record, Chief, that because sometimes when, as you said, you have a shortfall in terms of what was appropriated for 21, I wanted to make sure that there wasn't a provision with your budget from last year that lapses are carried forward. That is a common practice sometimes. So that was my question to the author, that this is not a double appropriation. It's simply authorization that you currently need for this appropriation.
Yes, Senator, thank you for that. And you are correct. Sometimes we are authorized to carry forward, but in this instance, when we looked at these two specific funds, there was no authorization that we found. We discussed this matter with BBMR, and we were informed that in order for us to access the lapses in these funds, we had to request for a bill to appropriate the money forward so that we can carry it.
Right. Okay, so just Masi, and Chief, I'll work with my good colleague. I don't know for the appropriation going forward on the incoming fiscal year, because we're really going to have to work with Rev and Tax on when they anticipate the revenues from special fund. As you said, this is vehicle registration, and we all know that vehicle registration has been, for proper purposes, been lagging due to COVID and the ability to process. So we may have to look at fund balances and the like. So I'll work with the author, but I don't know about combining at this time because you might not realize that in this fiscal year. So we'll see what we can do. But si Jesus Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now just have the author go ahead and close up, and we'll wrap this up, Chief. Senator Pito.
Like I said, Chief, we're going to be working, and I'm going to be working with the rest of my colleagues once I initiate that bill to make sure that, and I want to thank Senator Dueñas for his input, and his points is well taken, and we will consider that when I initiate the other bill. And I just want to thank my colleagues and I ask them to support this bill, please, so we can support the police department in moving forward with their responsibilities in protecting our public. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Terlai. There being no one else to testify, the committee will continue to receive testimonies. And please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, and submit it via email to senatorjoesnalson@gmail.com or to my office located at Rand Care Building, 2nd floor, Suite 3, 761 South Marine Corps Drive, Tamuning, Guam, 96931. Jesus Masi for attendance, Chief, and to my colleagues and to the people of Guam who participate in today's hearing. This public hearing on Bill 23-36 COR is now adjourned. It is 9:35. Thank you all. And then we will pause for the next bill while we're waiting for the Director of Department of Agriculture to show up. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Take care. Have a good day.
Good morning and half a day. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. Today is Monday, February 22nd, 2021, and the time now is 9:46. Notice for this public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on Monday, February 15, 2021, and the second notice was issued on Thursday, February 18, 2021. For the record, today is Monday, February 22nd, 2021, and the time now is still 9:46. The committee will hear and accept testimonies on Bill 25-36, introduced by Jose Pito Terlay and Vice Speaker Tina Rose Mooney Barnes, an act to amend A and F of Section 63103.1 of the Article 4 of Chapter 63 of Title 5 GCA relative to the stipend of the Civilian Conservation Reservists at the Department of Agriculture. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me. I have the author of the bill, Senator Jose Pito Terlay, Senator Frank Blas, Senator Chris Duenas, Senator Tony Ada, Senator Tello Taidegui, and Senator Joanne Brown. Those testifying on behalf of Bill 25-36 COR will be recognized by myself. We do have today on the panel, we have the Director of Department of Agriculture. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopy. Testimony may be read, and lengthy testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes. Individuals will be allowed to present all testimony only once. Once you're done, you may be asked to remain in the room for a question or for additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. And I ask the director to please don't leave, just stick around, okay?
Sure.
Question and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the public hearing by myself. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for this proceeding. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony or may be asked to leave and will be removed from the room. When you speak, please make sure the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name and your title for the record.
Thank you.
I would now ask Senator Pito Terlay to please give his opening statement. Thank you.
Dongklu na si Jesus Masi, Mr. Chair. Lago na bay nai dongklu na si Jesus Masi Rocky mangatsong tagwini gi 36 Guam Legislature. Dongklu talo na si Jesus Masi para i finatona i director i cultura. And I want to thank each and every one of you for looking at the bill, and maybe you can go with the trend of making sure that we accommodate the Department of Agriculture in the enforcement of whatever they do, and so we can move forward with this bill. My colleagues and the people of Guam, Bill 2526 proposes to increase the stipend for reservation reservists from $250 a month to $500 a month, to put it in line with other reservist programs. Only reservists who work 42 hours or more receive compensation. $250 a month for 42 hours or more of work is $5.95 an hour, less than the local minimum wage or the federal minimum wage. It's $62.50 a week, probably not enough for gas on a weekly basis. $250 for a reservist was set in 1990 and has not been updated in 31 years. So, colleague, I ask that you support Bill 2526 so we can extend the opportunity to have more reservists for the Department of Agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Pito. I'll ask the director, because he's quite familiar with the reserve program up there, and maybe she can give her introduction of the program and how she would like to assist the program to take off and be fully funded in some form or fashion.
Absolutely.
Ma'am, please.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Senator San Agustin, for having this public hearing, and Senator Pito Terlay for introducing this really, what we feel is a very important bill. Our conservation officers for several years now have have gone without a reservist program and have been taxed to their utmost limits, given that we have just been undermanned for more than a decade now. The reservist program, in its inception, as this is its first few months, has already proven vital to the support that we provide for our natural resources. It was really quite an honor to be able to swear in our first 15 officers. The program got its inception or had its initial funding set through a coral reef conservation program federal grant. So this first year is federally funded. What the officers have also done, though, under great leadership with Officer Richard Regadio, have now arranged a situation or circumstances with the NOAA Office of Law Enforcement. We're working through the fine-tuning of the language, but we're pushing to have their stipends reimbursed through NOAA's Office of Law Enforcement. So the first 10 officers we've already hired under the Coral Reef Conservation Program grant are federally funded at $30,000 annually for 10 officers, $250 a month for 12 months. The conservation officers, the full-time employees, we have a cooperative agreement with NOAA's Office of Law Enforcement, wherein they are sworn in as federal officers. They're enforcing federal mandates such as the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the Lacey Act, which is the transportation of illegal items across federal waters, and other such federal mandates. When they're enforcing those mandates or conducting inspections or conducting outreach on behalf of the federal government, their hours are reimbursed through NOAA's Office of Law Enforcement. So Senator Terlahi's incorporation of the language here to alter it to say that they will be paid stipends for uniforms and rather for duties performed as conservation officers will then allow us to have these conservation officer hours and stipends reimbursed by NOAA so that the office or the program will then become self-sustaining. These officers have already undergone the Marine training with our conservation, or these reservists, I'm sorry, have already undergone training with the Marine, in the Marine training. They're now embarking on their terrestrial training in the next couple of weeks, which will teach them about poaching, arson investigations, and protection of our wildlife habitats. And it's just been very uplifting for the conservation officers, our full-time employees, to have such augmented support and not feel that they're really out there kind of alone and it's just the 5 or 6 of them. But I will say that in the last term and this term, we've seen a great, wonderful increase in the level of support from our legislature, so the officers don't feel that they're kind of pushing such a steep, uphill battle with a large stone. Rather, it's starting to feel much more manageable, and we're seeing that support from our government. But this bill will bring them on parity with other reservists so that they're now receiving the same pay as other reservist programs. That in itself, I think, speaks volumes to how they feel that they're seen as important and valued in our community. When I swore in the conservation officers, aspects of my speech for them just centered on the fact that we all love our island, and I think that goes without saying. We see it in every action we take, and all the words that we speak and the things that we do, and that this job allows them to be protectors of that, and that doing this job is just a demonstration of their love for our island, and so that it's an honor to be able to be a conservation officer, and that's what they need to carry with them every day. And I believe that seeing their stipends be on parity with all other law enforcement allows them to fully embrace that as well and see that their service and their love for our island is valued by our community too. So thank you. And I'm here for any questions you may have.
Thank you. And I appreciate that you mentioned up front that NOAA would be able to reimburse, so they can actually, if we're fortunate that federal funding is maintained for indefinitely,
Yes.
This program actually is set up to win. It's a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because as we identified, and you're well aware of, that special funds, they're running short all over the place, and I wanted to make sure that with your support of this bill and the appropriate amendments to the law, and the support you get from the federal government, actually, it's a win. It's a total win.
Absolutely. If this bill is able to get through within the next session, I mean, we could be reimbursing their stipends in a matter of months, really. NOAA's primed and ready to do it. We've had this conversation with them. Everything is ready to be put into place as soon as this bill becomes public law.
All right, thank you. Senator Peter, do you have any questions from Ms. Joseph?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair, but I would like our colleagues to ask the questions first, and then in the final part, I'll
All right,
state
thank
my
you.
points.
Senator Brown, do you have any questions to the director or to the author on the bill?
Not so much any questions. I think we're very pleased to see the expanded work with regards to having civilian conservation reservists assisting the department with their work. Just minor, Mr. Chair, I'm sure when you review the bill, I see they're crossing out Magatlahi to replace with Magahagan Guahan. Perhaps you can just put a slash, because in the future, I mean, the bill will be, if it becomes law, certainly will be reflective of any future governor, should it be male or female, and I'm sure we don't want any male governor restricted from facilitating the work of this bill because he's not the Magahaga. So I just want a minor thing there, if we can just correct that for future reference. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Brown. So noted, it will be slash. Senator Tello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Chelsea. It's very good news when you come in here. You know about grants, and you know the importance of trying to finding funding anywhere, especially in a time like this. So my hat's off to you. Thank you so much for doing that. I do have a question, though. I noticed that the money is coming from NOAA, and it's coming from a lot of it like Coral Reef Initiative and Habitat. So these reservists are not just limited to marine habitat or anything that has to do with the ocean. Does it also include them to allow, and still receiving this the funding from the federal government, also include like stray dogs, going after that, hunters, for the enforcement of that? Does it also include that they allowed to do that?
Well, it absolutely does not restrict them from enforcing any federal mandates that are on the land, but so the money isn't just limited to them enforcing federal mandates at all. NOAA is perfectly aware that our conservation officers perform regular daily duties as a conservation officer is expected to do, but they also have specific number of hours that are allotted every month to enforcing NOAA mandates or conducting patrols in federal waters, or even NOAA sets the priorities of what federal laws they want specifically targeted that year, but it's not restricted to just that. So when the conservation officers are doing endangered species enforcement, that's typically terrestrial and not just limited to the water, and that counts as well. And that's basically everything that they do in some form or fashion is in support of a federal mandate. So they're not limited at all, and they can be out
no
there looking for
restrictions?
poachers.
But I think there is a restriction because they're required to do a certain percentage of the initiatives set, right, by NOAA, right?
It's not a percentage, they just have to meet their number of targeted hours for the year. So it's not limited to like a percentage, but as an example, I think for this year, they're around, I want to say 1,690 hours. And that can be done as overtime, and that would still be reimbursable as well. So it can also be done during their regular hours too, which our officers enforce anyway as part of their regular daily duties. As an example, last week they went out with one of our biologists to inspect turtle nesting sites. And that's our regular duty as conservation officers and biologists, but also supports the federal mandate as well for the marine mammal protection.
I see. Thank you for that answer. It's good to know. I mean, I think there should be a well-balanced, and you're doing a great job on both land and sea, sky, air, wherever there is, So I greatly appreciate that. The funding was a concern, like anything, it's increasing, but knowing that you have this covered, it's not an issue. It's not something that you're going to come back to this legislation saying, oh, by the way, I need that additional $30,000 a year to help that. So my other question would be, maybe you might be coming to this legislature asking for additional funding for like vehicles, like equipment, like the things these individual reservists are going to use to do their job and to do the enforcement. It requires quite a bit of equipment, as you know, right? The gas that's being used from this and everything like that. So do you have enough money if you were to increase the reservists here, or the 10? And congratulations to the first 10. I could see your eyes glitter when you said that you had the honor of swearing these individuals in. But to provide them the protection they need is another thing too. Does the department have these fundings to help them?
So I have to say that our leadership and the conservation officers have been really resourceful. And it was Officer Regadio who pushed this issue with NOAA about being able to have the conservation reservists be reimbursable. Because initially they told us that they couldn't because they're not full-time officers, but Officer Regadio worked with us and was really diligent about like just reading thoroughly through the law to show that as reservists, they're seen as full-time they're seen as law enforcement officers as long as they're in the company of a full-time law enforcement officer. So the language of the original legislation was written really well with that caveat. And NOAA law enforcement provides them a budget for equipment, for gas and all of that, but it supplements the budget that's already provided to us by the legislature. So I can't give all of the credit to NOAA saying that they're supporting everything. Our government provides an operational fund to our law enforcement officers that takes care of that. But we're also, when you kind of, like if we compare ag to a family, when you grow up poor, you become really resourceful. So we've worked with partners like USDA to get, their secondhand vehicles basically, and equipment. Our conservation officers have been really, I think in the last 2 years have become really skilled at researching grants, learning how to write them. We even put them through a NOAA grant writing training just last month. So, we're figuring out what we need to do to make ends meet, and we're working with that. But NOAA law enforcement absolutely helps support that too with the reimbursables. So if we expend money on certain activities, that comes back to us in some form or fashion that we can then use for more operations. So I don't anticipate that we'd be coming to the legislature this budget term saying we need more money for this or that. What we would need more money for is more conservation officers for sure. But at some point we'll figure out how to make even their salaries somewhat reimbursable through NOAA as well.
Thank you. And again, congratulations to those graduates that you sworn in as well. And just a last comment maybe, are you familiar, or well, if you're not familiar, with the program that allows first responders and as such to avail themselves of federal vehicles that are being issued out equipment. It's called the LAO program. The LAO program, LOA, Law Enforcement First Responders.
That's the LESO program down at
the LESO
DRMO.
program. So is the Department of Agriculture part of that group that's allowed to go in and compete for that?
Not directly. I believe we participated in it through our forestry fire prevention program.
Oh, okay.
But not through our conservation officers. I'm not sure why, but I can definitely look into that.
So yeah, check into that because
Sure.
there's a lot of opportunity for agriculture.
Absolutely.
The loss. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and for that, it escaped me the abbreviation on that. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Tyree. And Director, that's the LESO program. That's with Sergeant Tovis. I used to run that for revenue and tax, so that's why I'm very familiar with that. That's
Okay.
out of the DRMO federal grants. You get all the second-hand vehicles, but they're all running. The police department, customs, fire, every law enforcement has access to that. All they have to do is sign up.
Okay,
All right? And it'd be very helpful for you because you can get fire trucks. You can get all kinds of stuff.
excellent.
Senator Ada, do you have any questions to the director or to the author? Or any
Thank you,
comments
Mr.
you'd like to
Chair.
make?
Sure do. Good morning, Madam Director. How you doing?
Good morning, Senator Ada.
That's great. You know, you were mentioning that the program that you swore in, what was that, 15?
Yes,
15 new officers, right?
yes.
And these are all federally funded positions?
Yeah,
15?
look,
Yeah.
in a matter of speaking, yes. So the first 10 are funded through the Coral Reef Conservation Program grant. And then the next 5 are funded through prior year NOAA joint enforcement agreement funds. So the hours that our officers performed last year acquired like a small amount of reimbursable money. And so that money is used right now to fund the additional 5 because the officers agreed that that's how they wanted to spend it, was to support more reservists. And so they want, yeah, that was their decision to make.
That's great. That's good to hear. And then also that this is for 12 months you were mentioning, right?
I'm sorry?
12 months? This
Yes.
for 1 year?
Yes.
So then what happens after that initial 12 months?
So the plan is that when this law or this bill becomes public law, then NOAA will start reimbursing the stipends. And so if they're reimbursing the stipends, then we can use that to fund the next year of reservists, whether it's going to be the same people or different people. So then after that, the idea is that it becomes self-supporting.
Has it become in the past where they've not reimbursed or they've not continued the program?
So far, no. It's our joint enforcement agreement with NOAA. This is its, I want to say, 4th year of being engaged, and so far NOAA's really excited and pleased with it because they don't have the capacity locally to do this. So that's why they partner with local agencies. There's no law or NOAA Office of Law Enforcement here. The closest people they have are in Honolulu. And then one guy will fly out every couple of months just to sort of see if there's anything else we need or if everything's going well. We provide them with monthly reports, monthly invoices, and most of our relationship is maintained digitally, so they value this relationship.
Well, that's great to hear. Well, I'm looking forward for this bill to go to the floor, and hopefully the chairman will be able to get it up for our next session.
Us
and
too.
Looking forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Ada.
Thank you, Senator Ada. Yes, I do look forward to getting it out early. Senator Duenas, do you have any questions or any comments you'd like to make?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to discuss Bill 2536. And thank you to Director Chelsea for being here this morning, bringing her bubbly personality and energy to the legislature.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah, so the way I see this is much like a bill on the floor today that I will be voting in the affirmative of, creating your sister agency, Parks and Rec, the reserve program as well. And so what I had asked the author of both bills, and of course of this bill too, Senator Pito Talahi, is I remember in a former job that I loved very much as the Director of Department of Youth Affairs, we had the AmeriCorps program. And we considered agriculture as a sister agency, and you had that program as well. Do you currently have that program still with AmeriCorps?
Oh, absolutely. We love our AmeriCorps people. We actually, initially, AmeriCorps worked with our forestry section. But as soon as I learned about AmeriCorps and the work that they do and what they were doing with forestry, I then spoke with our other division chiefs and tasked them to develop projects that could bring in more AmeriCorps students or participants. So now we have AmeriCorps geared to work with our agriculture development services. I believe both DAR and biosecurity have also written projects for AmeriCorps. And what we found out from AmeriCorps themselves is that when it's time for students to come and sign up for where they want to go, there's always a rush and a mad line for agriculture. We're the first choice for AmeriCorps participants. So yay!
Thank you, Director. And I bring that up because of the fact that I did ask Director Alcantara maybe to reach out to you, that they can get some pointers on perhaps also getting AmeriCorps volunteers. Just because I think that, for me at least, at Department of Youth Affairs, the structure of the AmeriCorps program and volunteerism and the kind of the almost like a sister, duty and responsibility of reservists.
Absolutely.
And so, just, as we pass Senator Pito's bill today, maybe that's the to fast track their standing up of their program because you folks have the experience. So I just want to take that opportunity today to mention that to you and to be, I'm so happy that it's a flourishing program still, and maybe you can lend a hand. But in terms of this bill to codify this program, I think you've made a great presentation, Director, that it's going to be subject to that fund availability and reimbursement. And I think you're going to build a stronger relationship with this bill with your counterparts at NOAA, that they'll see that Guam is committed to this. And I think you're going to have success going forward in keeping that funding source available. So I thank you for being creative, working with the author, and also having an opportunity to provide resources to our island, particularly at this time when we're stretched. So thank you, Director, and to your colleague there, who's joined us today, so we can get him on the record.
Oh, yes, this is Officer Nathan Rios. He's actually learned quite a bit about grant writing, and I have to say Officer Rios has done a great job in bringing funding and projects to the conservation section. But he wanted to come and just talk about his experience thus far with the first conservation reservists, just so that you can hear firsthand how it's been going, and should you have any questions to ask about it, he's available.
Thank you, Officer Rios. I just wanted to recognize you. I'm sure the chairman will. Just wanted to welcome you here and look forward to any presentation you may have. Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Reyes. I'll have Senator Blas ask questions or make comments, and I'll ask Mr. Rios to make his comments. But we'll start with Senator Blas first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, ma'am. Good morning, officers.
Senator Blas.
Thank you for being here. Chelsea, you had mentioned that you've worked, and I'm glad you have, a relationship with NOAA, and part of the program provides you an opportunity for reimbursements of the funds that you've expended, and that's great. However, in the expenses or in the relationship that you have with NOAA, is there ever a point in time, and recognizing that a lot of times there's a give and take when you have relationships, most especially with entities that are outside of the jurisdiction that you're in. Has there ever been a time that there's been a conflict with what NOAA may expect of the Department of Agriculture, primarily specifically with its conservation officers, and what you are mandated and allowed to do?
No. I appreciate the relationship with NOAA because it's been very upfront, very easy, and very accessible from the beginning. We discussed thoroughly what expectations are, what we're able to do, what resources we may need, and nothing is left off the table. We talk about everything. Last year, we had Lisa Shira come out from Honolulu specifically just so we can have a laid out discussion about everything for the next year and what our expectations were in the joint enforcement agreement. And the woman who is now in charge of the Pacific region, Martina Sarapalu, she's from American Samoa, and I had met her in another capacity through the Westpac Council, and now she's in charge of the region, so we already have that ongoing relationship too, but she's a wonderful leader, and they've just been very open with us. We've been very open with them, so there's never been any surprises, and our officers are very clear about what their duties are and what they need to do. And they've been really diligent about keeping great records and writing the reports that are needed, submitting them on time. Everything's been really just as exceptional as you would want it to be or hope it could be. We haven't had any snags. this being not even a snag, but this was the first opportunity for even like any sort of revisions, just because now we want to be able to include the reservists, and they've been open to that as well.
Okay. Other than the reservists, how many full-time conservation officers do you have?
We're at 5 or 6? 6.
You have 6 full-time conservation officers.
That's with 2 new hires that we were able to pick up through funding that was provided to us last year.
Okay, and they're complemented by how many reservists do you have?
Now we have 15.
You have 15 reservists.
It's getting really exciting.
Okay, that's great. And how do you equip all of these officers?
Now that we have the officers, we've been working actually utilizing some of our operation funds and then some of our NOAA Joint Enforcement Agreement reimbursed funds to secure equipment for them. But some of them also come already with their own equipment, because our officers or our reservists are not just off the street. They also have to be law enforcement trained. So many of them already work in regular full-time jobs at other law enforcement agencies. So they come with their own weapon. I think the things that we're working on now is getting them uniforms, which are not a really extreme cost. I think their weaponry would have been the most expensive thing, and they come with that.
Do you have anything to say, officers?
Yeah, want to go on up?
So what I understood was probably in 2012 or 13, there was actually a grant that actually happened with BSP that funded reserve program. So the reserve program was there, but it never fully enacted. And so that grant bought some of the equipment. So currently now, the equipment that we have was from a prior grant.
Okay.
So we do have firearms that were stored away for the reserve program. We do have the gear belts and everything stored away for the reserve program. That's how I actually came in, was through that funding in 2014, was a rollover kind of spent fund. So that's what I understood. So even our old vehicles, there was vehicles that were procured back then in that grant to fund the reserve program.
Just not the bodies, I guess.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I do have other questions, but I just want to keep it germane to the bill here. And I'm sure we'll have it, just so we can make it a stronger program for you, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Blas.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Mr. Rios, Nathan, maybe you can just talk about the reserve program, what you've experienced up there, because you started out generally from that program and then expanded from there, and then you can talk about what's going on up there, the our culture, before I have Senator Terlaje go ahead and wrap up the bill.
Okay, so in December 16th is when we swore in the Conservation Reserve. Of course, we're during the COVID time, so we had to plan accordingly to what we need to do to get these officers up to date with what we do with our local mandates and also our federal mandates. So our officer in charge and us conservation officers came up with a good training program, and it's within events. So helping the officers or helping the reservists who are also full-time with their other jobs, we had to accommodate everyone's schedule. So instead of making a mandatory 3 to 4 weeks training, we broke it up to where this weekend we're doing, it will be the introduction, our own GCA, our GARs, going over our local mandates, knowing what our standard operating procedures are. And then the following 2 weeks, it was firearms policy, knowing the use of force and deadly force, getting them trained on that. And then the following week was actually the firearms qualification. Then the past 3 weeks, what we've been doing is our marine operation training. And our marine operation training is to include trailering a vessel, trailering a jet ski, learning the water confidence course, learning how to swim, tread water, being out there in the open water, and operating the ski. operating a vessel. It's just a familiarization. We are not certifying them to actually drive the ski or to get them in the vessel to operate the vessel. We're just familiarizing them with what the nomenclatures of the vessel or the skis are, just so that way they could be out here assisting us. As short as we are, these guys have been assets to us, and just getting them familiarized with what they can do out there will at least get them the perfect training. And of course, down the line, what we're trying to do is when we get them done familiarizing it, then we can expand more on the certifications with them. So I know the next event that we'll be doing will be our terrestrial, getting them to learn our UTVs, our side-by-sides, learning the area familiarization of where all the hunting and poaching actually happens. And during the marine operation, I'm sorry to go back, but the marine operations, we did include all our marine preserves. And that was also one of the biggest things that we were trying to ingrain to them, because our marine preserves have been hit. And with the lack of manpower that we have right now, these the reservists are actually going to be there to actually help us. So knowing the marine preserves, that is one of the main key things for us.
Alrighty. Senator Terlai, if you can go ahead and make,
I just wanted, Madam Director, I just wanted to point a few things here, because I did occasionally meet with your conservation officers regarding what can we do to enhance the capabilities of the conservation officers. One of the things that they mentioned was that it takes like three hours and more to process an arrestee. And then our good Senator Tello mentioned something about resources, equipment, and things like that. And I just wanted to ask you, what is your take on decriminalizing hunting?
I'm sorry, decriminalizing
Because,
hunting?
you know, Senator Clint Rigel, who oversees the agriculture, he chairs that, and I've talked to him, and we're planning on doing a bill to decriminalize hunting, aside from illegal, no firearm sighting, firearm hunting in an area that is restricted. Those are the things that we're going to watch out on the bill. But I wanted to really talk to the court regarding the administrator of the court regarding, decriminalizing hunting, because for one, I know that, you need the resources. And one of the things that I had in mind to introduce this bill is to just go decriminalize hunting, and the fines that you get from those individuals that were caught, we want to use that money to purchase equipment, because if you look at the geographic coverage of the conservation officer, it extends over 3 miles out on the ocean, and the areas is just too large for your conservation officer to cover. So I just wanted to ask you, what is your take on decriminalizing hunting?
Moving toward decriminalization and moving towards more of a, I think, what you mean is like the citation program would be extremely efficient for us. As it stands, you're right, it does take 3 hours or more sometimes, depending on the take, to process an arrestee. And then we have to forward this to the court that is already overtaxed. So what typically ends up happening is that poaching cases, whether they're on land or in the water, end up either getting dismissed because it's not high enough on a priority list for the Attorney General's office, which we understand. I mean, when you're dealing with crimes against humans or in our community, someone who was shooting a deer illegally or fishing in a marine preserve that's the bottom rung. And then what ends up happening in that case is it either gets dismissed, or if we seize a vehicle in that arrest, then the arrestee has to pay out up to $500 to get their vehicle back. And sometimes that can feel like just a really gross miscarriage of justice when you see that they've illegally poached hundreds of fish from our marine preserve, which not just robs the preserve, but it robs our community, it robs our tourism industry, it robs our children and generations from seeing fish grow, from having the abundance of fish that we need to watch, that will then later swim out of the preserve and spawn more fish for our community that we can catch. So having someone either have their case dismissed or just pay $500 can feel really frustrating to a conservation officer, let alone someone else like me, who's, you know, the super hippie environmentalist that loves all of this stuff. So a citation program would be much more efficient in time. It would be much more efficient in our resources of the courts and the Attorney General's office. It would be much more efficient for the legislature, even, for the money that you would then be appropriating to our officers for their operations budgets. Because if they're, and it's also a more efficient deterrent if you know that your case is not likely to get dismissed because it's not going to be that anymore. Because honestly, that is what happens. We've seen people get arrested and then they know that their case will be thrown out or it's not going to come up for them. So then we've caught, on one occasion, I think one guy was caught even twice already with poaching, and that was in 1 year. Because what's going to happen to him? They kind of laugh at it sometimes. So a citation program would just be much more efficient all around for everybody.
Thank you, Madam Director. Mr. Chair, thank you very much. My colleague, thank you very much. And I ask that we support this bill so we can enhance enforcement, even more enforcement, in as far as the conservation officers are being charged with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Terlai. The committee will conclude this public hearing. The committee will continue to receive testimony on this bill. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing, and submit it via email to Senator Joe S. @gmail.com or to my office located at Rand Care Buildings, 2nd floor, Suite 3, 761 South Marine Corps Drive, Tamuning, Guam. Zeus Masi for your attendance, Director, and Officer Rios, Primo.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Senators. I hope you guys have a wonderful day.
And for those at home, thank you for watching. This public hearing on Bill 25-36 is now adjourned. It is now 10:24. Thank you and have a nice day.